love the no home moving here to Indianapolis from where I'm from, because it just kind of, it's comforting to see. My first introduction to tattoos, my Uncle Chris gave me a tattoo magazine and he was like, you know, draw something out of this. So I drew a little Woody tattoo that I saw. It was kind of my introduction to drawing at a young age. I grew up in a really small town. There really wasn't much around. At the time, I was really into skateboarding and playing music. I kind of found myself to be a bit of an outcast. On my 18th birthday, I went to my mom. I told her I wanted to get a tattoo. So I was going into tattoo shops when I was 17. They would pretty much chase me out and say, come back when you're 18 or something like that. So I never really found a place to go to until I met Joel at Good Family Tattoo. So after getting my first tattoo, I was so blown away by the entire experience from start to finish that I would go into the tattoo shop that I got my tattoo at with drawings that I had. Kind of made semi-close friends with the guys there. I would pop in every once in a while and just say hey, and have them look at my drawings that I had done and critique them for me. And after a while, I just kind of stopped going in. I was playing in bands, and the band that I was in ended up separating, and I started to figure out that just wasn't gonna be my lifestyle. So it was time to enter the real world. My parents wanted me to get a real job and start figuring out what I was gonna do with my life. So while I was working at this company, I went with a friend who was getting tattooed, and once again introduced to the whole experience of the tattoo from start to finish, and very intrigued by what he was doing. And I was like, you know, maybe this could be something that I could pursue. I started drawing a lot once again after going into that tattoo appointment. Somebody told me at that time, you know, if you want to be a tattoo artist, you need to draw stuff that people would normally get tattooed on them. So I drew some traditional tattoo flash and, you know, stuff like that, just to kind of get introduced to drawing again. I took my portfolio to a tattoo artist that I found in Racine, Wisconsin, and he told me he didn't have time for an apprentice, but he was interested in looking at my drawings. He was interested in giving me a little bit of advice. I let him know that I'd been to a bunch of tattoo shops. People were just kind of brushing me off. People telling me that, you know, they didn't believe that this was something for me. My portfolio wasn't strong enough, and nobody would give me a look into an actual apprenticeship. And he told me that a lot of great tattoo artists just bought tattoo machines off the internet and started tattooing some friends, because there was no shortage of people who wanted a cheap tattoo at that time. So I went home, ordered myself a tattoo kit from Amazon. When that came in, I immediately opened up that kit, looked at the tattoo machines, had no idea what I was doing, kind of set them up to the best of my knowledge, and tattooed some fake skin a little bit, and it was just way more difficult than I thought it was going to be. At that time, a friend of mine hit me up and he said, hey man, I heard that you wanted to learn how to tattoo. He offered up some space to do a small tattoo on him. I went to his house and I set up a little spot. We did a little skull on the side of his leg, and it was just such an awesome experience that from that moment I was hooked. I went back the very next day and did a skull on myself, on my thigh, and it was pretty decent sized, and it was kind of one of those moments where I didn't really see this being something that I would be able to do without somebody actually teaching me how to go about this the correct way. That friend of mine who allowed me to do My first tattoo on him actually reached out to me and said that he had gotten a spot at a shop. It was a very small shop out in the middle of nowhere, and there really wasn't a lot of work coming in. One of the artists that worked there, he's like, you need to focus on learning how to do tattoos well, and the only way you're going to be able to do that is if you gave it, you know, your everything. My lease at that time was about to be up, and I reached out to my dad. We went to a little diner, just kind of laid it all out. I said I wanted to pursue tattooing full time. He asked me what exactly that I needed out of him in order to make that happen. I said I'd like to move back home and live rent-free with no real responsibility for paying. I just needed a place to stay and quit my job and go tattoo full-time. Part of the deal was I had to keep my job until the summertime. I was at my night job one of the nights, felt miserable working there, and I was just like, you know, I'm an artist. This wasn't going to be my lifestyle. So I walked out in the middle of my shift. I went home really early in the morning, and I told my parents that I actually had gotten fired, and they didn't believe that at all. They knew exactly what I was doing. And from there, went to the shop, told the owner that I had quit my night job and that I was gonna tattoo full time. And I was excited to start off from there as being a full-time tattoo artist. So this tattoo shop wasn't very busy. I wasn't an apprentice, I was a full-time artist. I was responsible for trying to drive in clientele. I was very new and I didn't really know how, didn't have a good reputation. People were telling me at that time, after seeing my portfolio, that, you know, they would never get tattooed by me. So it was very difficult to bring in clientele myself. I didn't have a car, and the tattoo shop was quite far, actually. It was probably like, you know, 45 minutes to an hour from my parents' house. And I would catch a ride on a Monday with a buddy of mine. I would sleep on the couch, and then he would come pick me up on Wednesday. I would go home, shower, pack another bag, and then he would drop me back off at the tattoo shop Wednesday night. I would sleep at the shop until Saturday. On Sunday morning, and then I would just repeat the cycle on Monday. And I did this for almost the entire summer. Towards the end of the summer, I had realized that if I was going to pursue this full time, I needed to be in a studio that was driving in clientele and I was going to be busy at. So Keith had told me that he wouldn't be upset if I went to go work at another studio. I started reaching out to some tattoo artists that I had, you know, met through social media, and that's how I got introduced to Tyler Sasky. He got me into Big Hit Tattoo in Kenosha. I worked in Kenosha for a while, not being very busy. It came time that my parents had confronted me and said, you know, they didn't believe this was working out. I wasn't making enough money doing it, and that it was time to get a job once again. I was very disappointed by this, and I told them that I was actually looking for a job, but in reality, I was just going to the tattoo shop and just pursuing this and just failing miserably. My buddy Tyler told me that him and his girlfriend were going to be moving in together and they needed a roommate. So the rent was $200 a month. That's all I had to come up with. And without a thought, I just said yes. And I went to my parents, told them I was going to move out of their house and I was going to continue to tattoo full time. So I had been tattooing in Kenosha for a while. It was a little busier than the other tattoo shops that I was in, but in order to bring in clientele and to actually tattoo people, I had to cut the rate pretty low, and it was not lucrative at all. I had some family out in Indianapolis. They wanted to get tattooed by me, and I reached out to some tattoo studios. No real solid answer on a place to work at, and eventually came across Ink Therapy and talked to Chris Taylor about doing a guest spot there so I could tattoo some friends of mine. told him that I had some family that was interested in getting tattooed while I was out there, and I was also interested in doing some small walk-ins that they had coming into the studio. He set me up with a guest spot. I came out for a weekend. I had done the best I had ever had in a weekend at that time, and I was very interested in coming back and working again and working with the artist that I would be offered to work with at his studio. I told him I was interested in coming back about a month later. I came back, and once again it was a busy weekend, and Bradford actually took me out to dinner one of the nights that I was out there, and he was like, if this is something that you really want to do and you really want to learn how to tattoo, you need to move here, and told me he would try to convince Chris to give me a job, because at that time they needed an artist to do the walk-ins that his artists were currently too busy to do. And I went back home, and I put in my 2 weeks notice. I don't even think I made it 2 weeks, actually. I'm pretty sure about after a week I went and rented a U-Haul, packed up my stuff, and made the move to Indianapolis. And it was kind of funny, because it was a running joke for a while that I didn't make it my 2 weeks and I just up and left, and they were giving me a hard time for leaving my trash can filled. I didn't even dump my trash can. I was just out as fast as I possibly could be from that place. So I got my U-Haul, packed everything up, made the trip out to Indianapolis, and I didn't have a car or any sort of transportation. Was moving in with my uncle that lives out here, and I actually drove the U-Haul around for 2 or 3 days and got a couple of late fees because I never turned in the U-Haul. I drove that U-Haul to my interview, actually, and Chris told me that he would give me a shot to work there. He would start me out at a few days a week and just kind of see what happened, because there really wasn't a whole lot of room. In order for me to work there, I would have to work out of his booth or whoever just wasn't working for the day. But I didn't care to not have a spot. I just wanted to be in a tattoo studio where I was going to be busy working. I showed up for my first day. Chris told me that I started at 4, and he called me on the phone quite upset at noon, and told me he didn't have time for artists who weren't gonna take working there seriously, to put it a politer way, and asked why I wasn't there in a very angry message to me. I called him back immediately, and I was like, hey man, you told me that I started at 4. And he was like, oh, that's right, I did. Well, from now on you start at noon. And then I got into the studio the first day, and instead of working, I think like 3-4 days a week, he told me I was gonna work. He was like, you're gonna work every day. So I worked 7 days a week for quite a while, then moved down to 6 days a week for a while. I didn't mind at that time, because I just wanted to be tattooing. I wanted to do every tattoo that I could. And I wanted to learn how to do this well. So I was kind of getting my footing, working there, hopping booths around quite a bit, and ended up getting my own booth there after a couple of years. And it was a very surreal experience to go from where I was from, going from a tattoo shop with a terrible reputation, to sleeping on couches, to driving a $500 car. It was quite an experience to move into a studio from there, where I was busy tattooing and making a living doing it. And I feel like I did pretty well at that time for how new I was to tattooing. A lot of people asked me, like, how did you get hired into ink therapy? Because it seemed like such a difficult shop for artists to get into. And I told them I didn't really know. All I knew was I told Chris I was willing to put in the work, and I was willing to take on every walk-in. So I had been tattooing at Ink Therapy for a few months. I took on a tattoo that I did not do well. Chris did not believe that I did it well either. He pulled me aside one of the days, and he told me it was the worst tattoo to ever come out of the tattoo shop, and that if I did something like that again, I might as well pack my stuff on the spot and figure out another place to work in. He told me that from then on I didn't take anything larger than a palm-sized tattoo, and that I needed to pay attention very carefully to what the artists were doing at that studio. I was working under Kenny Sloan a bit and Mike Schultz, and getting advice here and there from them, but Chris believed that I could have been paying more attention. So he told me that I needed to pay more attention and that I wasn't to do a tattoo larger than palm-sized, and I needed to go to them with every tattoo that I had done and get a critique out of it and figure out what I need to do to improve the next time. So after a while, I didn't take anything on that was large. The very small walk-ins, I focused on my line work. I focused on doing, minimal shading and putting in black in, the right spots, and the putting in the values in the right areas. And a walk-in came in at that time and wanted a tattoo of the Poseidon statue head that's pretty iconic. I intercepted the client in the lobby and I booked the tattoo. And when that time came, I was talking about it to the guys in the studio that this was a tattoo that I had booked. And Angie was Biggin's wife. She was working the counter at that time. It told me that this was not a tattoo that she would have given me because she just felt like it should have gone to a stronger artist that, that was working there at that time. One of my good buddies, Mike Shaw, pulled me aside and instilled some confidence in me, because they were kind of getting down on me and making me really nervous about taking on this tattoo. Mike pulled me aside and he was like, man, you can do all those tattoos up there in your little portfolio. You can do this tattoo. Just nothing to it but to do it. And it came down to the day to do this tattoo. And I was a little nervous, but I went into it as confident as I could possibly be. And came time, and I felt like I did a good job for where I was at in my career. And I was pretty proud of how it turned out. So at this point, I had been tattooing at ink therapy for, just about 2 years, maybe 3 years. The timeline's a little difficult for me to remember, but it came time for me to move on. And Bradford had just opened up a private studio in Greenwood, Indiana. I had reached out to him. He was very interested in having me coming in and working with him. And it was my first experience working in a private studio, and my first experience actually going from a tattoo shop to a private studio. And it was definitely a good decision. Around this time, I had found out that my son was gonna be born. So after having my son, I kind of figured I would need a little bit of help here and there. I moved back to Wisconsin to be closer to family, and once again just proved to be not busy and very slow as far as the clientele that I was driving in. I would come back to Oathkeeper once a month, and I'd work out here for a week and then go back home. And it just proved to me that coming to Indiana was the right decision to do from the get-go. And moved back here, and I've been tattooing at Oathkeeper ever since then. So working here at Oathkeeper, I've been able to really hone in on this body of work that I've been pushing. And I think that this was the place that I needed to be in order to push my career into the path that it has been going in. And it's been a great experience working here with Bradford, just kind of taking off, being able to do this style that I was wanting to do from the beginning. And I would say that along the way, there's been so many good highlighted points. I wish I could go back and tell all of them, but coming to Indiana was definitely the right decision. And working at ink therapy definitely pushed my career along. And then reaching out to various artists here and there to kind of give me some advice on the projects that I was taking on and some tattoo techniques that I was really searching for at that time. So through the years, I've had so much support out of my family and especially my fiance. She's, I would say, my biggest supporter. You know, I talk to her about every tattoo that I do. You know, show her the designs. I show her the tattoo after I'm done doing it, and it's really awesome to be able to share this lifestyle with somebody who is so supportive, because you know, I needed that support. I didn't really feel like I had that support for, you know, a long time. It felt like I was on my own, and from that beginning, just needing that support to where I am now of my career, and just blown away that I've made this a lucrative lifestyle. So I couldn't be more thankful to share this experience and this lifestyle with her, and you know, I'm excited to see where the future takes us. So looking back to where I started, a tattoo shop that had a bad reputation and not very busy, to where I am now, really pushing this creative portraiture style is pretty wild to me. I appreciate everybody who comes out and gets tattooed by me, especially the clients who travel in. It's just so surreal to me, because you know, originally I needed that clientele and that support, and it's just wild to me that people now travel to me to collect a piece of art from me. And all of this wouldn't be possible without every client who comes in and allows me to just get creative with their tattoo. I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. Originally, I needed that support, and the overwhelming support I have from everybody who comes in, I can't thank you guys enough. So through the years and through my progress, you know, I'll have, you know, clients ask me, hey, how long have you been tattooing for? And, you know, I guess it would just depend on who you ask.